And if you think I'm evil, well, just wait till you meet my variants.
You're an interesting man. Scott Lang.
What is going on to all my MCU fans out there, and welcome back to the channel. We have officially begun our journey into this new phase 5 of the MCU, and it begins with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania in the beginning of the Kang Dynasty. Now the question is this a must-see MCU film that you gotta see in theaters, or is it a middle-of-the-road Ant-Man adventure into the quantum realm? We'll be discussing that and much more in today's spoiler-free review, but before we get into it, let's start the conversation in the comments below. Let me know if you all were excited for this film and if you're a fan of the Ant-Man franchise. And of course, once you've seen it, let's talk about it. What worked, what didn't work. Let's talk about the story, the scope, the scale, the performances. Are you excited to see more of Jonathan Majors as Kang? And since this is the third film of the franchise, where would you rank it amongst the other two? Let's talk about that in the comment section. And of course, if you enjoyed today's review, consider hitting the thumbs up button, sharing this video. I would really appreciate it. With that being said, let's get into my thoughts, starting off with the positives, and let's talk about the director of all three Ant-Man films, and that is Peyton Reed, who has come out and said it's finally time for Ant-Man to get their big event film. And coming after Age of Ultron, coming after Infinity War, do we get those expectations? Does the hype feel like it's there? Well, I'll just say this about Peyton Reed. He takes a lot of swings and for the fences, and some of them hit and some of them don't, but we're focusing on the positives. And with that, I gotta say, I thought Peyton Reed by far brought us the biggest and most ambitious Ant-Man film in every sense of the word, as we finally get to explore the depths of the quantum realm. And what comes with that is this whole new civilization of aliens and creatures, and I really enjoyed that element being added to the experience, because for me, I thought Peyton Reed really captured this idea of otherworldly feeling. It felt like a real cool science fiction adventure, and you can tell his time on working on The Mandalorian. He directed 2 episodes of that show, and in particular when you think about the finale of season 2, he brought a lot of those tools that he got from that Star Wars universe and applied it to this film, which I thought was really handled pretty well for the most part. But then pairing that with the writer of the movie, we have the writer of the movie here being Jeff Loveness, who you all might know for his time on Rick and Morty and other different TV programs. I thought that Jeff brought a good amount of lore and mythology to the table, especially establishing these different pockets of the quantum realm and giving the audience just enough backstory to get us excited for Kang. Now, if you all do not know, Jeff is the writer of Avengers Kang Dynasty, and after seeing this film, I'm excited to see him continue that lore and that world building, but I'm also a little bit nervous, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But again, I thought the pairing of Peyton's direction and Jeff's writing was, for the most part, pretty solid. But let's talk about these performances, and I want to start off by talking about the lead Avenger, Scott Lang, played by Paul Rudd, who I'm a fan of, and I gotta say, I thought Paul Rudd was pretty great in this film. He's charming, he has the charisma, as we always know, he has the jokes, but seeing him in this film, what I really enjoyed is seeing Scott Lang dealing with the aftermath of what do you do after Endgame? What do you do after saving the world? What's next? Well, we see him wanting to focus on being a father to Cassie, which to me was the main heart of this particular story. And I thought he did a good job of not only capturing the most powerful, most Ant-Man version that we've seen of him in the MCU. Like, this is the best version of Ant-Man we've seen. He's doing a lot of cool stuff, getting big, getting small. He's perfected the science behind it, but more particularly focusing on that father element. I thought it was really interesting to see him really wanting to protect his daughter by any means necessary after being hunted by this conqueror. So again, if you're a Paul Rudd fan, if you like Scott Lang, I think you'll enjoy what he brings to the table in this third film, which also brings me to his daughter. Let's talk about Cassie, who's played by Kathryn Newton, who's making her MCU debut. I'll be honest with you all, I thought that she was okay. There were some moments in which I felt like the more emotional beats felt a little bit underwhelming, but I did enjoy how the film incorporated her motives in this film, being someone that wants to help people, which to me builds on this idea of the Young Avengers, which I assume she will be a part of that particular crew, and having her fit right in with them. So again, overall, Kathryn did an okay job. Again, I just felt like some of the delivery was a little bit off, but I'm excited to see what they do with her moving forward. We got to talk about my man, the original Ant-Man, Hank Pym, who's played by Michael Douglas. He's also okay. He's just kind of there in this movie. He gives the occasional jokes. He is the smart scientist. He's exploring the quantum realm. And he also lets the audience know just how important his ants are. So again, Hank Pym he's there. He's okay in this movie. But there were a couple other pieces to this puzzle. Like, for example, an actress by the name of Katy O'Brian, who plays Jenna Torga, who is the leader of the freedom fighters in this film. I enjoyed her performance. But we got to focus on the main attraction, which the two best performances for me in this movie comes from Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet and my man Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror. Let's talk about Michelle Pfeiffer first, who is Janet, who is making her return. And I really do think the title of this movie, which is Ant-Man and the Wasp, really focusing on the original Wasp in this film. Janet has a lot more to do this time around, more so than Hope. And I'll be honest with you all, Hope does take a backseat in this film, but I was okay with that. I wasn't mad at that, because if you think about it, she's the driving force of this narrative, because Janet has spent 30 years in the quantum realm. She's an expert, so she knows all the ins and outs, and I really enjoyed seeing her perspective going on this journey, her being a leader, but also her being very fearful of what's in the quantum realm, and particularly her relationship that she had with Kang. So I thought that Michelle was great in this movie, and I'm glad they gave her a little bit more to do than previous times that we saw her. One thing I will mention, without giving too much away, they didn't explore some of the abilities that we saw from her in part 2. I'll just kind of leave it at that. But let's talk about the Kang the Conqueror, Jonathan Majors. Oh my goodness, y'all. When I tell you all, he completely steals every single scene. I mean that. The way he demands your attention, the words had weight whenever he spoke, and you notice the way he talks is so meticulous, and just knowing how much time, how much conquering he had experienced. The man is not here for any BS, and I love that this film didn't do the Marvel thing. They didn't throw any jokes towards the character. He was very serious throughout his entire time on screen, which is roughly around like 18 to 20 minutes, but you felt his presence in this movie. There were no jokes, there was no BS. I also really appreciated how the film didn't take anything away from him being imposing. The casting was perfect. The costume was so fire. Seeing him using his powers, him being in his environment was just great to see. As a fan of Jonathan Majors, I cannot wait to see more of Kang moving forward in this multiversal saga. If you are a fan of Kang, if you are a fan of Jonathan Majors, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think it's almost impossible to be disappointed. There are some elements that I didn't like about the writing, which we'll say for a little bit later, but overall, Kang is that dude. Getting into some other elements before we get into my criticisms, I will say this film is a lot more serious than the previous Ant-Man films, which I personally appreciated, but I also want to get into being impressed by the post-credit scenes. Without giving it away, obviously, there are two of them, and I'll just say this. Both of the post-credit scenes are very important to Phase 5 in a very major way. I'll just say that. But let's get into my criticisms here and just getting all the small nitpicking out of the way. This is an MCU films. We're 30 plus movies into the franchise. Not all the jokes work for me, and we know every MCU film has this elements of jokiness, and I didn't find all the jokes land, which was okay. But also, I did feel like there were some underused actors, man. Like, for example, we have William Jackson Harper and as well as Bill Murray. I felt like both of those characters were wasted. And I also just want to bring up the fact that if you have known me, and whenever I talk about the Ant-Man franchise, I have a favorite character in this franchise, and that favorite character isn't in the movie. And I won't say who that is, but it broke my heart to not see that character. I'll just say that. But getting to the seriousness here, as far as scenes didn't work for me. First off, I will admit the film is a bit messy. And what I mean by that is, especially thinking about the last half of the film, the first half of the film, to me, did a good job of catching us up with Scott and the Ant-Man family within the first 10 minutes. And once we actually get into the action and we go into the quantum realm, and when you see the actual reasonings and the setup of why we find them in the quantum realm, to me, was a little bit, it was purely accidental, which to me just kind of added this sense of like thinness to the script, but also when we get into the quantum realm, we're split into two different groups. And to me, I feel like the film had a hard time juggling those plots because they felt uneven, in my opinion. Which also, going back to when I mentioned the heart of the film being the father and daughter relationship between Scott and Cassie, to me, the trailer sold me on the idea that Scott's motives to helping Kang was because he believed he was going to get more time with his daughter. But when you see the film, that's really not the case, and I won't get into the details, but I was kind of disappointed by the way Scott was helping Kang because it felt very generic and very kind of stereotypical. So when you see the film, you know what I'm talking about. But to me, I also want to mention the film didn't know really what it was until understanding of Kang and when he actually comes on screen. And it wasn't to that point that the film, at points, it felt like the journey to the center of the earth meets Thor Ragnarok. So it was kind of like, tonally speaking, it didn't know what it was until we finally got Kang into the picture, which once that happened, the film kind of finds its momentum. But I talked about the swings, but let's talk about the misses of the writing and direction with Peyton Reed and Jeff's script. To me, I got to talk about one of the big misses, and that is the inclusion of the one mechanized organism designed only for killing, aka MODOK, who by all accounts in the comics is a very obscure and weird concept of a character within itself. But I'm going to be honest with you all, I wasn't a fan of the use of the character in this film. I wasn't a fan of the handling of MODOK in this movie, and to me, without getting to all the weeds of who is MODOK, I just felt like that character was just used for a punchline. It was just a joke. Every time the character was on screen, it was a joke. Never menacing, never scary. I wasn't a fan of MODOK, and I'm very curious to see how other people feel about MODOK, but for me personally, I wasn't a fan. But getting into how I talked about being a fan of science fiction and really loving how we dive into the quantum realm, I also kind of felt disattached when we were in the quantum realm at points because I felt like I was more or less watching the movie versus fully being immersed into what was going on screen, because 95% of this movie is in this CGI quantum realm, obviously, area. So to me, sometimes I feel kind of disattached with being in this CGI world. But now talking about Jonathan Majors, who I talked about his performance being top notch, but going to his writing, I will admit that the actual writing of the character sometimes felt like the film dumbed him down, or maybe I should say they adjusted his power level in order to match the power and the skill set of the Ant-Man family, and seeing certain things going against the Ant-Man family, to me, makes me a bit worried of how they're going to handle Kang in the MCU moving forward, because I always talk about how the MCU has an issue with power scaling and sometimes not fully giving the character their justice. And this was my issue going to Ant-Man and Quantumania, was how can you have such a pivotal Avenger threat level villain going against, and this is no disrespect, but going against Ant-Man. And to me, my kind of concerns were seen at points in this film. And when you get to certain elements, you'll know what I'm talking about. But last but not least, speaking of elements, I do want to mention, I don't know if I truly bought into, after now seeing this film, the hype and the idea that this is a big event Marvel film that believes it is actually the launching pad of Phase 5, while also being the end of a trilogy. To me, this is one of the most open-ended trilogies to an end of a trilogy of any Marvel film so far, because it didn't have like this sense of like it was actually ending. So again, the balancing of being something so important, but also ending something that has been around for 8 years, it didn't really match those needs. So those are my main pros. Those are my main cons. Before I give you all my score and let you know if you should see this when it comes out in theaters, if you stuck around to this point in this video, I appreciate you. Just a reminder to like, share, comment, and consider subscribing to the channel. Overall, if you enjoyed the previous Ant-Man movies and if you enjoyed the weirdness of a Thor Ragnarok, then I believe you'll enjoy this film as a fun experience and a journey through the world of the Ant-Man quantum realm, going to the quantum realm with the Ant-Man family, as it also introduces a new big bad of Phase 5. But just a pro tip for you all, don't go into this film with these huge expectations, because I think if you do that, you'll be fine. So overall for me, I'm going to give Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania a 3 out of 5. And I'll say this, I won't say that I'm disappointed by the film, because if I'm being honest with you all, I was never a big Ant-Man film to begin with, but I was hoping that this was going to boost my confidence into this new Phase 5, and I'll just say that it was just, you know, like I said, it's an okay. It's not the big event film that I thought it was, that Marvel was kind of pitching it up to be. So with that being said, if I were to rank the Ant-Man films, I think for me, it's going to be Ant-Man 1, 2015 Ant-Man, this Ant-Man Quantumania, and then Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I'm not a fan of that film at all. So there's my thoughts on Ant-Man 3, pros, cons, score. With that being said, it's your time to participate in the comments. Once you've seen it, let me know what worked, what didn't work. Are you excited for more Kang? Is this your favorite Ant-Man film in the franchise? Let's have all those conversations in the comments below. Again, I appreciate you all for watching the video. Just a friendly reminder before you all leave to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I do plan on having some more Ant-Man conversations, so keep an eye out for like a spoiler discussion with some very special guests. You all have been awesome. Hope you're staying safe. As you can see on the screen now, come and join the community. Check out all my other MCU content that I covered on this channel. Check out my most recent breakdown. We'll catch you all on the next video.